Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, more specifically the work in progress Sega Saturn core. Because over the weekend we got another core update fixing a new batch of games. Some of the fixes are going to be very obvious, other ones are going to be a little bit of a deep cut as far as the visuals are concerned. But it seems like some Z priority issues have been ironed out in some games, and the way that the Saturn sets up its visuals with VDP1 and VDP2, this is definitely important, so we're going to go over the games and show you what is new. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well, because M. Bison is a member, shouldn't you be? All jokes aside, I love that Raul Julia is M. Bison in this game and video. It is just one of those classic movies where I'm not sure if it's good or not, but I certainly always enjoy watching it. And of course, Jean-Claude Van Damme is the icing on the cake, but Raul Julia is still the winner. Now this is definitely not a good Street Fighter game. The arcade version is better, but it got ported over to Saturn. It's one of those infamous games. But the best part about this game is it shows a very big bug that was in the previous cores that has been fixed, and it all has to do with how VDP1 and VDP2 do layer priority on all of the different assets, whether the backgrounds, the sprites, or anything in between. You do need to have every layer in its correct order, or else you're going to have problems. This is Street Fighter the movie on the previous core, and you're going to see that there is some sort of priority issue with all of the different assets on screen. E Honda and Sagat here are just going behind another asset, and their layering priority should not be doing this. So this was a glitch or a bug in the code of the core, which has since been fixed. But if you previously tried to play this game, this is what you would see. You'd see those sprites and digitized actors disappearing behind other assets on screen. That has been 100% fixed up in the current core, and again, while Street Fighter the movie is in any way, shape, or form not a good game, this is one of those situations where the bug fix is so apparent, it does fix a lot of other games as well in a lot of minor ways. This is the most obvious one, and I do love that you have all of the story in between the matches. This is the type of game they definitely tried. It's not as successful as an actual fighting game as it is an experience, but it's such a wild time, and you'll see here how many different layers are on screen at once. You have the sprites, you have that boardwalk in the foreground, you have the different boats floating in the background, and then you have the actual background layer in and of itself. These are all prioritized based on their layering, so if there's any issues whatsoever, things are going to start disappearing in the background. Or this hospital stage here again, in the previous course, sometimes your sprites would just completely disappear behind other objects on the screen. It didn't make the game any easier to play, and it definitely wasn't correct. So these are important fundamental fixes to the overall core so that you can actually play all these games as they were anticipated to be played. It's just a bummer that this game couldn't have been a little bit better. As far as Street Fighter games, it's probably the weakest I've ever played. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you had any fun with this one. I would be curious. But last time I checked this out, basically the cage was just causing some of the sprites to only have their top half visible. And if you think about sprites, don't think about one sprite being the entire screen. They are broken up into segments. That's why sometimes they disappear and sometimes they don't. Now moving over to Shining Force 3, a game you guys always ask me to retest, and I try to accommodate. This one has also seen improvements in the most recent core, mostly in the battle sequences. The glitches can be harder to notice, so definitely pay attention when I call them out, and keep an eagle eye in all of the visuals, because you will spot some things that probably even I didn't notice. But the best part is, on the current core, all of these visual glitches have been 100% fixed up. Now this just looks like Shining Force as you know, love, and remember it. And that's the thing about these glitches. Sometimes they are obviously apparent. Something like Street Fighter the movie, you can tell immediately there is a bad problem with that. And we are still in the current core where it's been improved, and we'll be moving over to the previous core in the next video. But from all of the loading, all of the effects, all the battle sequences, all the 2D and 3D elements, they are now mixing together perfectly fine as far as I can tell. Every once in a while the model is a little bit wiggly, but I remember that from real Saturn hardware too. Now if we move over to the previous core, we'll look for glitches in some of the effects right here. Tell me if you see them and what they are. I'm going to be curious to know if you could even spot them, because that is sometimes the hard thing about these tests. Sometimes it is painfully obvious what the problem is and what was improved. Sometimes you have to basically pause, get a magnifying glass out, and start looking for stray pixels to be able to tell the difference. But that is how good the core is, how much it's improved in 2024, and how it continues to get even better. And just so you know, we are on the previous core, so do some glitch hunting right here, and in the next shot we're going to move over to current core where it should all be taken care of. But the other nice thing, since the last time we talked about Shining Force 3, is the audio levels are more normalized. normalized. Last time we talked about this, I said that a lot of the music was ending up higher as a volume than I would think it should be. Now that seems to be 100% patched up, so this is your audio sample. Go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll be back with 2 more games that have seen improvement, but enjoy because this music is spectacular. Sounds good to me, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. Now moving on to a game that's seen improvements as well, but one that I wouldn't really spend much time playing is 3D Baseball. Big thanks to Andy D for helping with some of the captures this week as well. He picked Chicago and Seattle. I thought that was pretty funny, the 2 cities that we do live in. But back in the day, everyone wanted to have a sports franchise, and Crystal Dynamics was no different, so they went ahead and made 3D Baseball, which is not a bad baseball game in any way, shape, or form. It's just one of those things that you either love playing games like this or you don't like playing them whatsoever. I love that this baseball game takes place at Crystal Yards. It is not Wrigley Field or whatever the hell they call the stadium in Seattle. Sorry, Andy, I just don't have that information off the top of my head. But this is the current core right here, and in the next shot we're going to move to the previous core, and this is another game that had graphical glitches that you'll have to look for in the captures, and that is the interesting thing about testing these cores. Not every single test could be on one of those games that you know, love, and remember for the Sega Saturn, because for every single 10 out of 10 hit, there is a game that you either love or hate, or for the most part no one really likes. But going through games like this, picking out the bugs and trying to solve them is going to also improve probably a couple other dozen games that we just don't know that the bug's in yet. So watch this capture. We're on the previous core. I'm not going to tell you where the glitches are, but you should be able to spot them. Maybe if you rewatch the segment once or twice, they will be in there. And that is the interesting thing about these bug fixes. Some of them are just so easy to spot. Others are basically almost impossible to see. And that's why it is so important that we do these tests. People on Discord test them, and people put up issues on SRG320's GitHub with evidence in photos and captures so he can spot them as well, because imagine being a single person trying to bug hunt the entirety of the Saturn library. You could spend a lifetime and never get that done, and we moved over to the current core again, so there should be no visual glitches to compare against. But that is why if you are playing Sega Saturn and if you do notice a bug, go over to GitHub, put an issue in if it's not already there. That way SRG320 can take a look at it and it will help improve the core. Your testing definitely assists, so keep doing it. Now moving over to a game that saw improvements a few cores ago that I haven't shown you guys yet is Sakura Wars. This is definitely one of those games people either absolutely love it or is just not a genre for them, but I do love the mix of these FMV anime cutscenes with the actual sprites within the visual novel portion of the game. And last time we talked about this, there was definitely some freezing, there were some visual glitches, you could have some issues with it. I don't off the top of my head remember exactly what the most fundamental one was, but it was not something that you would want to sit down and start playing at its previous iteration. Now on the most recent cores, it is 100% buttoned up, and I do love this game just for the fact that it's showing off exactly what the Sega Saturn can do with 2D and how much detail you could get in art at 320 by 240 or whatever the specialized output of the Sega Saturn resolution is. It is slightly off that 320 by 240 mark, and this is just another example, like I said, of just how good the Sega Saturn can truly look and just how good the core is showing you these images, especially on HDMI. This is just crystal clear. You get so much detail, so much to see, and all of that detail is coming through so well. And again, this is just something that wasn't possible on the previous cores, and it's a capture I've had in the folder for a few weeks now at least that I've been meaning to show you guys. But definitely leave me recommendations down below for games you want to see retested, and I am going to do some more Saturn versus real hardware test, core versus a console. So if you have any games you want to see on that as well, do leave them down below. But it's so much fun to follow along with all of these improvements, and this core definitely had a lot of them. Street Fighter the movie being the most fundamental example of something that was definitely not playable that moved over to the playable category, but something like Sakura Wars here, having these small improvements is just getting the core that much closer to one-to-one accuracy, and that is always the goal, trying to make sure that the FPGA core is doing no more and no less than a traditional Sega Saturn console, however you play it CRT or on an HDMI signal on your flat panel. So the good thing is we're seeing a lot of improvements, and I can't wait to see what the next core brings. But there's so many awesome games you can play on Sega Saturn today. I've shown a ton of them on the channel, and next time the core updates, I will do another update video. But again, if you have any requests for testing, down below is where you'll leave them, because I do think we probably should revisit some of the games. But go grab the most recent core on the MiSTer FPGA Discord under the Unstables Nightly channel, and you'll be having a ton of fun. After that, we're done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.